Welcome back to Detections Podcast with your host, XL Atreides, and...
Understudy 77.
So, have you gone crazy yet? I'm going crazy.
Oh, I've gone crazy. I can only imagine for you, because, like, you're an extrovert. Yeah. I'm not.
Jesus.
As much as it may seem that I'm an extrovert from, like, you know, the way I comport myself at conferences or, like, here, I'm really not. So, like, you want to talk about, like, me right now? If I'm going a little crazy, I can only imagine you.
Yeah, it's definitely a growing experience in patience and managing those extrovert tendencies.
However, I will admit, I have one thing that you do not have right now.
Animal Crossing?
No, a 4-year-old. Who loves dad so much, and I love her so much, but I very much miss silence. I don't know if, like, Parks and Recreation fans, but silence, the absence of noise. Where silence once was, it is now filled with Doc McStuffins. Which isn't actually true. Like, it's filled with rescue bots for me, but God, is that true right now? And I'm pretty sure, like, every meeting that I ever have, like, she makes an appearance. She comes in, she goes, hello. Today she's like, lower the microphone. I want to talk into it. I want to use a microphone. Come on, let's have a dance party.
That's pretty awesome, though.
Daddy, I want to play. We got to go to the doctor's. And I love my kid, but, like, I also need to get work done. And the one thing that I've learned about being a manager in a time like this, so bear in mind, so I was full-time remote for 6 years. Like, I honestly spent more time of my career full-time remote than I've spent, like, working in an office. However, a couple things have changed. I no longer have a very quiet basement office. My office is across the room from my kids' playroom. I no longer have a hackerspace that I can go to once or twice a week where I can hang out with other people, other than, like, my wife and my kid. And most importantly, I'm a manager now, meaning my days are mostly meetings and talking, and, like, that's what I do for a living. When everybody's work from home, you do that way more. There is no silence left for me at all anymore. None. And it's not like filled with TV or pleasant music. No, it's filled with other voices. Most of the voices I enjoy. But I'm still sick of hearing all of them.
You just want some nice silence.
In the middle of the day. Like, I don't want to have to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning anymore to get silence.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be able to kind of lean back in my chair and be like, ooh, I have an hour. It's quiet. This is nice. Nope, that doesn't exist. How are you doing, though? Because, like, you're actually an extrovert. So, like,
it's rough, man. Like, I really want to go to a concert. I really want to go over to my friend's place. And I'm also really sad because I'd go outside, take pictures. The state that I live in shut down all state parks.
Yeah, I saw that. You posted that. You shared that with me the other night.
Yeah, because no one was listening and being respectful. Everyone was rushing the same parks and making big crowds again. So the state's like, because you weren't
what
listening.
else are they going to do? There's nothing else open.
Yep. And now that's even cut off. So
you know,
I was going to say, all that's left is the federal land now, the publicly owned federal
land. Oh, yeah.
Land.
You know where my sadness really comes into play right now? You know what I was supposed to be doing tomorrow?
No.
Heading off to B-Sides Charm.
Oh, I've lost
my favorite conference usually of the year. And I was supposed to be on my way there tomorrow to see all my lovely friends and all the DPS people. The upside of the September thing is you'll probably be able to come. The downside is I have to wait till September. Yeah. And then, like, everything else is canceled. Like, Circle City Con's going virtual. Diana Initiatives, like, just about everybody's basically going virtual at this point. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I personally don't like everything going virtual because then I lose the thing that I enjoy the most, that face-to-face human interaction.
Same. So here's the thing. A virtual conference is basically a webinar. It's a bunch of people who dial in and listen. There's no interaction. There's no jokes. There's no pointing. There's no haha. It's you can't see the people that you're talking to, which means you can't gauge their reaction. And I admit I'm much worse at talking to a computer screen than I am at talking to a human, like looking at a human, right? So like in order of ways that I like to talk, like I like to talk with other people and to other people. That's number one. Like with a group, you know, I did a YouTube show for 5 or 6 years that was literally with 3 other people. I do this with you. I like to talk that way. I'm good at it. Conversational, I can do that online.
Yep.
Second, I like to be in front of a room of people. I can gauge reactions. I can look at them. I can know if my jokes land, which you never really know, right? Mm-hmm. It's not dry. Like there's some audience participation that exists in that. People raise their hand, ask questions, and make a joke. You can go, I can tell Blind Hacker to shut up and stop heckling me while I'm on stage. Things like that. Yeah. My least favorite way to talk is like webinar style, where like I am the only one talking and a bunch of people are shut up and I can't even see them. That is the worst way to talk. No conversation, no nothing, like on Twitch or whatever. Like just not my thing. And then you get the other side of it. You lose like, so admittedly, I speak at conferences. I don't actually go to talks though. Like, unless I know the person, like I very rarely go to talks. I hang out with groups of people. And I'll talk to this group, then I'll talk to that group, then I'll go over there to that group, then I'll go all the way back here and over here to this group. I hope that effect actually works out kind of cool.
We'll find out later.
Yes, we will. But like I've done the kind of Zoom virtual conference thing that they've been doing, like Quarantine Con. 50 people in a Zoom room are not effective. It was cool, but 50 people in a Zoom room are not effective. Like, this is why human beings tend to break off in like groups of 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. Because they can converse. Even like if you go to dinner with like 20 people, like you're going to talk to like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But you can't do that in an online meeting.
No, and we saw that because on St. Patrick's Day, Dropkick Murphys did a concert, a 2-hour show online for free for the world. When I was watching it, the highest spike I saw was like 160,000 people watching, which is amazing, right? Like they got out there, they did it. I could tell they put in their full energy, but it wasn't the same as having that crowd around you, feeling everyone getting into the music together.
God, no. And as much as I love to listen to music, which I do, like there's an energy that comes from going to a concert.
Oh, yeah.
And sitting front row. And then like you come home and like you love that band so much more. And they're all you want to listen to for like 3 weeks because you have the memory of that experience in your head and the power of that and the rawness of that. And like, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that I think, you know, as Info Janitor likes to say, you just had to be there. And as we switch to an online world, which I realize is great because it makes things more accessible, you really lose that closeness and that specialness of like you had to be there. Like Nova Hackers is getting ready to do their first virtual meet, and I'll go, but like I go to Nova Hackers primarily not for the talks, but for like the talks afterward, like seeing my friends and talking to them and catching up. And like that's why I go to that event every month for 2 years. The virtual one, it's basically just going to be people get up and talk and you listen. Like that's all you can really do.
Yeah. We should get Chris back for another episode and talk about the psychology of the disconnection with people versus
right?
the.
Well, that's one of the reasons. So as people are going through this, as hard as this may be, utilize video chat whenever you can. Like, please God, utilize video chat whenever you can. It's the closest you're going to get to being close to other human beings right now. And you need it. Like, it's important. Like, my team has been actually jumping into video chats of their own accord just to chat with each other. And, like, I've been encouraging them, like, guys, go bullshit about cars. Go talk about whatever you want that's not work-related. Just get into a room and talk to each other about personal stuff. Non-work related. Like, you need it. You have to do that kind of stuff. It's important. Anyway, so...
enough of our soapbox about this.
Right? Last week... and we're kind of going to bleed in. So like bunch of really cool free training opportunities opening up, and we'll talk about some of them in the news, and I can kick that off. But first I want to again mention OpenSock. Huge thank you to the folks from Recon last week who came on, talked about it, gave us early access to signups for OpenSock, which is freaking amazing.
And didn't they tell us that we hit nearly 100 before they opened it up to everyone else?
It was a pretty good response as far as what I know. And I mean, honestly, we had a really good response to them coming on the podcast. It worked out really well. People seem to really like it, but I do have an apology to make. I need a drink for this. So, as you know, here at Detections, we don't really do a lot of editing. We don't really do any editing. We just kind of bullshit and then we put it live. Typically, I kind of jump around in the audio a couple times, make sure everything sounds okay, make sure nothing sounds off, things like that. Well, I did that. And I apparently hit the perfect points that said, hey, this episode sounds good. Until someone hit me up later and said, man, like 45% of that episode just has a lot of echo. I'm like, oh shit. So I went back and then I randomly selected different points. And I was like, oh, it does have a lot of echo. So I actually isolated the problem and kind of tuned most of it back as much as I could. I couldn't fix all of it, but I got as much of it gone as I could. It's the nature of having 4 people in a room, ultimately.
And that was our first time that we had 4 people.
4 people in a room.
Yeah.
But I got as much of it as I could. But for anybody who listened in the first 3 hours or so before I re-uploaded and fixed it, you had a worse listening experience than everybody else, and I am sorry. It goes to show you, exactly how much money we pay for our production values right there. Also, maintain low expectations.
And on that, I signed up for OpenSOC too, so there'll be an official Detections representation during this competition.
I signed up for OpenSOC too, but I'm not playing as Detections. I'm probably playing with my work team.
Yeah, you still have a job.
I do. And like we were saying, one of the things about being a manager is you think about your people first.
Yep.
Right. So as much as I'd love to be like, hey, DPS, let's start a team. No, realistically, the right thing for me to do and what I should do is I should go, hey, my actual team, the people that I work with every day, do you guys want to play this game? So should they want to play that game? I'm going to play that game with them.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope I can get some of our Patreon supporters to get on the official team, and then we can have a Paranoids Detections.
Just call it the Detections team.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm a smoke you, fool. Just saying. Much love. So on that, we're going to post the sign up link again because I think it's still open. If you haven't signed up yet, you should go sign up because it's such a cool competition. Go listen to last week. We talked about it a lot, but it's such a cool competition. But one of the cool things about quarantine, as much as we soapbox for 6 or 7 minutes about it from the start, and I'm gonna jump right into the news because this is cool. So many people are doing free training right now. It's just part of it, including Sans, by the way, who has launched an entire series of virtual capture the flag challenges. They're going to be delivering different virtual NetWars offerings on a weekly basis through May 31st. And they have a whole bunch of different kind of CTF events for different kinds of people. So some of them are closed, some of them are passed, but for the most part, they're doing a lot of really cool stuff. They've still got Virtual NetWars Capstone, Virtual Mini NetWars Mission 2, Virtual Disk Sans ICS, Virtual Cyber Defense NetWars, Virtual Mini NetWars Mission 3, Virtual Core NetWars, all open to the entire community for free if you register.
That's awesome. My first CTF was actually NetWars at a Sans event in San Diego. So
okay.
They're pretty fun.
And that's a small sampling of the full amount of free training that exists. If you just go browse around on Twitter, there's a crap ton of it.
Yeah, I was noticing that too. But that reminds me, I saw something that Sans was offering for free right at the beginning of all this quarantine stuff that they put together.
Oh, really?
A kit of, what did they call it? Secure work from home.
Oh. I think I saw that, right? This kind of this is how you work from home kit.
Yeah, exactly. Giving you not just software recommendation, but ways to work from home, securely and still be efficient at work.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a really cool other side effect. because the EFF released a whole thing too about what you should know about online tools during the COVID-19 crisis. It's basically talking about how, hey, we're going more and more to digital. Like they're talking about Slack. Like if you use free Slack, what does that look like? What does Slack retain? If you use Zoom, what issues do they have? Like what does that look like? So it's a really cool article. As always, all this stuff will be posted. Well, for anybody new from last time, all links to any of the news, like we're not going to read it to you. You're perfectly capable of reading, I hope. If you're not, like, I don't judge. That's cool. But
message us and we'll try to help you find some resources.
Exactly. Good with that. But like EFF has a cool thing of resources that we'll link in the show notes and in the kind of description on the blog. But that brings up Zoom. So like, you want to start first or you want me to start first? Because there's a lot of Zoom stuff going on right now.
There was a lot of Zoom stuff, but I did only pull one out. And it was about how people are taking advantage of all the Zoom popularity right now, and that they are doing Zoom-like domains to try to take advantage of people to get malware installed.
So Zoom is not having a great year.
No. That's an old tactic that still works just a good amount of time.
It totally is. But Zoom in general is not having a great year, because even if you move away from the attacker side, like in pandemics like this, like let's be honest, what companies do really well? Telecommunications, media, and interconnectivity. And like team building and teamwork. So video conferencing, chat, stuff like that. Those are the types of companies that do really well when everybody's shut at home, as well as shipping services like FedEx and stuff. Like they're going to do really well too. Technologically, telecommunications, media, and communications. Zoom, however, has been having a lot of problems. So article came out March 31st. It's linked in the article that we'll actually share, that basically Zoom has been lying probably about end-to-end encrypting their video chats. So like that happened. Like you could encrypt Zoom, or you could intercept Zoom video calls because they're not end-to-end encrypted, even though the company says they are. Plus, like Zoom leaked the email addresses of a few thousand people because personal addresses are treated as belonging to the same company. And then lastly, there was just a 0 day for Zoom. Now, bear in mind before everybody freaks out about this kind of stuff, it does require physical access. So you actually have to be local in some sense. But you can basically piggyback off some from previous findings. And last year, like they found out that like when you uninstalled Zoom on a Mac, it didn't actually like fully uninstall, and it kept like a shell on the box, which was a huge problem.
What?
Yeah. So you can install a Mac app without user interaction, basically. But a local attacker can inject the Zoom installer with malicious code to obtain high level privileges. Basically root, which means he can do anything from the Zoom installer. And I think he released 2, actually. The second bug looks at how Zoom handles a webcam and microphone, and I'm pretty sure said that you can inject. Yeah, so here you go. You can inject malicious code into Zoom to trick it into giving the attacker the same access to the webcam and microphone that Zoom already has.
I wonder if this is all related to the web server aspect of Zoom itself.
It could be.
I know that they had a web server installed in the app, and a lot of that sounds like that they might be leveraging the micro web server in the app itself.
But just in general, like there's a lot of Zoom stuff going on right now.
Wait, Zoom has taken over Ring? I'm kind of surprised.
Zoom may be taking over Ring. You're right. You're right. What else you got?
So you were talking about that, and it reminded me. Did you read the long tweet from Stuart Butterfield, the CEO of Slack?
I did, man. That was a really interesting tweet. That's actually where I started to kind of make some of the correlation that, like, oh yeah, like communications companies and telecommunications and media, Because did you read the article where they were trying to say that where the EU was asking Netflix to stop streaming in 4K because they were worried that the internet wouldn't work anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the world we live in today. But that tweet was really, really well thought out. I really liked that. And it was really transparent.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the transparency of the process that he went through as the CEO and how he handled it internally, and then how it affected Slack as a company, and how they're at the problem where they have too many people and they don't know how to handle all the new onboarding. Because it's
he said what, they were gaining like 500,000 users a week?
Yeah. It was like 9,000. What was it? 3 or 9,000 new customers a month, like new businesses a month. And
yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, it's good for them, but it just shows what you were just talking about, that there's this massive move to have all this stuff in place. And
and those are the companies that come out good in this situation. And I can actually appreciate the honesty, because like at the end of the day, like this is a horrible thing, and like people's lives matter the most. But like people who run businesses still have to run their businesses. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't have much of a choice. So like, you know, you still have to worry about numbers, and you still have to worry about hitting this and hitting that and EBITDA and all that other businessy jargon crap. It all still matters, because the world's going to come back to normal someday. And like, we're already probably losing way too many businesses, to be honest, from this. I don't want to think about it. That's going to depress the hell out of me.
That's for a different podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to end up like doing the rest of the episode like this.
Eeyore.
Oh, damn.
I put the link in our notes already, so when we publish it. But definitely, if you haven't read that, take a moment to read it and get a chance to see some like transparency from a large company CEO. Insight into the business world.
So now that you've got me depressed, I'm going to make myself happy.
We finally going to talk about Animal Crossing, because I have some serious FOMO with how many people are posting pictures of this game.
I wasn't, but I'm going to now. I have literally been spending my evenings playing Animal Crossing, and it's awesome, and I love it, and it's great. And honestly, it could not have released at a better time. I've made DPS shirts. I've made paranoid shirts. I made a detections hoodie. So if anybody listening plays Animal Crossing, hit me up on Twitter, get my friend code, and then you can get the detections hoodie.
Sweet.
Because that's awesome. But no, what I was going to talk about was this so I just kind of came across this website called sasselstuff.com. Basically, it's a dude who does little comics, like stick figure comics about life, dieting, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, blue teaming, and drawing keyboards poorly. Defensive InfoSec, to my knowledge, has never had a comic before. So I actually read through some of these, and they really made me laugh. I thought they were quite funny. And there's a lot of like, you know, normal lifey kind of stuff that's funny too. But you know, I really liked a lot of his comics. Like he's got one that's like guest admin administrator, like it's just all water coming out with like computer 01 1 2 3 4 5 6 admin, and it's like him trying to put a band-aid over a big hole in the wall.
I just saw the HOA one.
Yeah, right. The HOA one is really good. So like, go check out this guy. I think. Fuck, I'm gonna feel really bad if it's not a guy. Doesn't really say. Go check out this person's comics.
This human being's comics.
Yes. Because I think they're pretty cool. They're funny. He's got some cool stuff, and it's like Blue Team related, which to me is really cool. So there's some cheer for everybody. What else you got?
Let's see. Taking a look here. We can smack that cheer right down.
Don't do that to me. I'm gonna take off my headset and walk away.
I only had a couple of things on the bad side here. One was just a weekend review of.
I wonder if that'll sound like I got up and walked away.
It sounded like you threw something and it hit a lamp.
I put my headphones down and it hit a plate. Close, but my plate from dinner is still here.
But I found this weekend review just to kind of see like what was going on since I've had more time to not be involved with the computer. And I saw that there was this article. Let's see, when was this posted? On the 29th, so just a few days ago, about how there was a Windows users under attack through two new RCE 0 days using the Windows Adobe Type Manager library.
Okay.
So yeah, and it affects Windows. What is it? Server version 1909 through Windows 10. So all the current stuff.
All right. I think we could probably pivot to attackers a little bit.
Yeah.
A mysterious. You ready for this? I love this. I love the article name. A mysterious hacker group is eavesdropping on corporate email and FTP traffic. I just love their usage of the word mysterious. Like, that is a word that I think does not get used enough.
Like it's some old Spy versus Spy comic.
Yeah, and it's a word that I find to be very pleasant. So I love the use of it. Basically, at the core of it, Draytech Enterprise routers. This came out like December 2019. There's an exploit in Draytech Enterprise routers. So if you're at an enterprise that has anything by Draytech, there's basically they found a vulnerability in them. Two different threat actors have exploited different 0-day vulnerabilities in the routers, in the Draytech Vigor, which is a load balancing routers and VPN gateways, to steal FTP and email traffic, essentially, creating backdoor accounts, stuff like that. The patches for them were released in early February. Looking at this, they learned of them, blah, blah, blah. But worth knowing just in case, we'll link it. It's got some cool details, but like, yay, more attacks.
Yeah,
Back to you.
What I was just going to appear because I hadn't actually heard of this insurance company before, but I have this article about how the Maze group was claiming that they hit this company called Chubb Unlimited with ransomware, and that they're a huge insurance company, life insurance, health insurance, casualty, accident. It says that they operate in 54 countries and territories and in the Lloyd's insurance market in London. So yeah, so that's pretty big. And if it's true, that's a pretty big deal, having one of the big global insurance companies getting hit with ransomware.
Oh God, yeah.
Especially with the trends of then blackmailing them if they don't pay, that they're going to release the information that they encrypted.
Also, yes.
Now, your turn.
All right. So, talk about VPN a little bit. Apple iOS 13.4 is hit by a VPN bypass vulnerability. They brought it out, already found a big bug. Proton VPN is actually the one who started talking about it. It basically, iOS does not close existing connections as it establishes a VPN tunnel affecting 13.3.1 as well as 13.4, which means you kind of since your connections aren't getting clear, you have a bypass for your VPN. So shit can be snooped. So Apple is aware of it, from what I understand, and they're working on a fix, but there isn't one that is known at this time. And I think we have a couple more news topics, but I think the news topics really fit in well with our actual nightly topic.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, because what I have left feeds into our topic. The
two that I have left do as well. So we realized something, and I'm going to take a pot shot at us right now. We have these really amazing guests on, right? And then we follow it up with like a lukewarm show. And maybe this is a lukewarm show. I don't know. It's going to be hard to top last week. That was a really good set of guests. But we have this, like, we follow it up and it's kind of like, oh, like, let's talk about, like, I don't know. What was one of the softer topics that we talked about right after a good guest? Andrew, like very introductory IR, which was a cool topic, but it was really soft coming right off of open source tools, right? So this week, we're going to talk about what's in our toolboxes, because I think that's a cool topic and everybody has like different stuff. And I asked this question in interviews too, and it teaches me new things to go look at.
And I think this is a good one to follow up on the last one, because I will admit that some of them may have been soft, but I mean, we were still getting our feet under us, trying to figure out how we wanted to do the podcast.
I just wanted to take a pot shot at us, man.
Rightfully so. But yeah, so we thought that this would be a good one to follow up because it's completely related to the special guest we had from our last episode.
This is all stuff that could potentially help you while you're playing OpenSock. But one of them I think is really cool because it's something that's newer to me, and I think we've mentioned it briefly here before. But I'm going to kick it to you for that one because I think it's cool and I think it's worth talking about. And I'm pretty sure we've mentioned it before. It's at least newer to me and I've used it before. So like, we'll start there.
Which one?
The Linux one.
So I found this. I had not heard of this distro before, but when I was telling you about it, you're like, no, yeah, you were familiar with it.
That's because I had an employee who went to a SANS forensics course and they used it there and he brought it back to me and he goes, hey, check this shit out. And I said, hey, this is probably better than what I've been using for a long time.
I will admit the first thing that caught my attention was the picture, because it was a samurai.
Yeah, well, marketing and stuff.
Yep, and it hit a thing that I enjoyed. So, but this is called Tsurugi Linux, and it's a two-parter. So it's got a digital forensics piece and a open source intelligence piece. The big thing about it, and pulling from the word itself being the two-bladed sword, is they maintain two completely independent profiles. So when you're in the digital forensics profile, the only software available and installed relates to doing digital forensics. And when you're in the open source, it's only the open source software. So each side of it is lightweight and focused for the individual work being done.
Yeah, this is kind of on my wish list to play with way more. Like I have it on a VM. I've used it once or twice, but I admit I'm a little bit of a dinosaur because like I'm used to Remnux. I've used Remnux for a long time. So I tend to kind of fall back to that in a real work scenario. But I think this is a really cool distro that has some really cool tools built in. And I mean, for anybody who grabs one of these tool-based distros, and we'll probably talk about a couple of them tonight, remember that like it's just a suite of tools that are basically installed on Linux. So like, just keep that in mind. Like we might talk about Tsuragi Linux or Remnux or whatever, but what that is just a compilation of like 200 different tools that have different use cases that are kind of pre-installed on one box.
Yep. And the cool thing about it is, while you're familiar with Remnux, that's what you go back to. Like myself, I haven't really dug too much into one to find my individual niche. Or some of our listeners, play around, see which one you like, see which one fits you better and helps you complete the job, do the work.
Mm-hmm. And I got two kind of cool things that I saw recently. The first one is this thing called the Mitten Mac, incident response tools and threat hunting knowledge for Mac OS. Not super common, right? If I take a look at the website, there's an OS X incident response book by this guy, how to do incident response with the tools. So there's also a tool, which as we talk about tools, there's a tool called True Tree. God, I can't say that 10 times fast. I have to say it about that speed. It basically builds process trees looking at like PIDs and PPIDs, which is parent process IDs and process IDs, to kind of build like a tree of what your process chain looks like, which is something that's pretty common in like a lot of expensive EDR tools and pretty common in like, doing with some Windows tools, but it's really cool to have one for Mac, especially as like a Mac guy. The other one that I found out about recently, and I'm pretty sure that I found out about this from Chris Sanders, is a tool called Brim. And like, I'm glad I'm talking about Moloch later. Otherwise, I would probably get so much shit for talking about this tool. It's this concept of like, and I'll just give you the description. And because I haven't really dug into this yet. If you've ever used Wireshark to hunt down a problem, got lost in a sea of packets, or you want to see Zeek logs in a new light, check out Brim. Basically, it's a kind of ties this stuff together and like makes it not look bad and makes it easier to use. So you pipe in a log set, which honestly is something that I used to do all the time with NetWitness Investigator, which is a good thing to chat about too, actually, that I didn't put on the list. But this looks relatively similar. Like you can pipe in all your stuff and then you can look at the data that way. do the same thing with Moloch, but Moloch I don't think is a standalone application. Like there's setup there. Like this feels way more standalone application. Pipe in your Zeek logs, pipe in your Wireshark or your PCAPs, and like use it to do the sorting. So really cool freaking tool that I would suggest people check out. We're also recommended by Chris Sanders, who's way smarter than either of us. So
put together.
Yeah. So those are the new ones. So that kind of digs us into like this concept of like what's in your toolbox. And we broke this down a couple ways, right? So just to make this easy, like we're going to break this down between like enterprise grade tools that like cost money, open source tools. Many of them are going to be the equivalent of some of these enterprise grade tools. And then like online tools that we use for investigations and things like that. The obvious ones, Splunks, your SIM, your tip, things like that. So you want to talk about those for a minute?
So real quick, the break down those acronyms that you just use, SIM and tip.
Security information and event monitoring, SIM, basically log aggregation that goes into one location, and then you can build correlation rules. You can search it. You can look for stuff. Basically a storehouse for all your logs that you can build rules off of. TIP is threat intelligence platform, a place to house your indicators, a place to kind of add context and information about those indicators, which you can often link into your SIM.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, that way, if there's anyone who didn't know, now they know.
Exactly. But I'm going to let you take those for the moment. Go ahead.
So there's two basic, like on the SIM front, there's two basic ways that I've dealt with and interacted and seen out there. There's the ones that are like your QRadars, your ArcSights, your RSA NetWitness, where you send it a bunch of logs that has a bunch of pre-configured or custom configured correlation rules, and then that.
Well, NetWitness is a bit different because NetWitness is just packet capture.
Secure Analytics. I was looking at NetWitness.
Secure Analytics,
yeah.
correct.
I was looking at NetWitness on the screen when I was talking about something else. So.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The Secure Analytics. It builds correlations, and you have stuff like Splunk and your Elk Stacks, which is Elastic, Logstash, and Kibana.
Which is your free version of Splunk, basically.
Yeah, in a way. And Graylog, things like that ingest the logs and is more built around being able to search the logs directly and allows you to build different sorts of search things and do other things like analytics and mathematics against the logs rather than building these multi-line correlation searches.
Then you have your tip, your things like the anomalies and who's Threat Connect? Threat Connect's another big one. Yeah. Or your MISP, which is your free version. Which is basically the storehouse for your indicators and how you can kind of integrate indicators into your SIM in a smart way that works better when you get to the Intel side. Provide some context and things of that nature. A lot of these are big. A lot of these are expensive. A lot of these are things that like you're going to use in every organization in some way, and you're going to use them as really the primary tool that you investigate on. But and some they're going to exist.
Some of them do have like free licensing though for people to try out at home in a non-commercial setting.
And many of them that offer that free licensing offer them at severely limited
capacities.
Yeah. So like you can put a little bit into Splunk, but you don't get any of the enterprise security features. You don't get any of the correlation features. Yeah. You don't get any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's just the basic search so you can get familiar with it. Now there is one other tool that I wanted to bring up that I've had a chance to look at and play around a little bit on one of the work sites that I worked at. It's this appliance called ExtraHop. Comes out of the Seattle area. And what it is, it's basically like an inline network summarization appliance. So as the packets are passing through it, it pulls the data off the headers and creates a summary table and allows you to query it. The thing that I liked about it is it did it with DNS. So as an analyst, this was an appliance that allowed me to get DNS data without enabling DNS logging on older Windows systems, which would crush the processing on those servers.
Sure. And then you also have the enterprise kind of grade, like full packet capture suite stuff, the NetWitness. NetWitness Investigator is a free tool. NetWitness itself is an enterprise grade tool that does full packet capture. You also have the free and open source version of full packet capture known as Moloch. Full disclosure, two things about Moloch. One, It's fucking awesome. 2, my company makes it. So if I didn't say that, I would probably get in trouble. Not by like the people in charge, but by my peers. But that doesn't change that it's not fucking awesome. Because it's free and open source and it does full packet capture across your whole network, and that's cool.
And a ton of people know it and use it because it's been one of those ones, because it's free and open source, people teach with it.
It will, and it's also part of OpenSock. So like, be prepared. But these things are like these kind of bigger enterprise grade kind of things that like you're going to walk into an organization and likely they're going to have it. Or there's going to be somebody else who determines what tools that you use or things like that. They're bigger. They're enterprise. They're huge, right? Even some of these open source ones. You can set them up at home. Security Onion is a really cool distro to set up at home, which kind of integrates some of the Kibana stuff and Bro and Zeek, which we'll talk about a bit later. Cool home distro. Businesses can use it too, but it's network capture. Like, it's not necessarily like something that you just kind of pack on a laptop for an investigation, right? Like, it's something that's pre-planned and set up, and you're using it to capture and gather information.
Yeah, Security Onion's definitely networking focused, where stuff like Remnux and Tsurugi are individual system.
Yeah, they're distros that have tools that help you analyze specific logs. They don't capture them as well. But I do want to talk about one of my like recently favorite enterprise tools. It's this tool called Polarity. Dude, this thing is so cool. And at some point, hopefully we can convince them to come on and talk about it, because I think it's really reasonable for what it is. Basically, it hooks into your video card and it OCR scrapes your screen looking for text match patterns. And it can do a bunch of different stuff with that. So like me with a team of analysts, like I can look at something and I can investigate something and be like, oh, like I know something about this. This is the CISO's computer, or like this is bad, or this is not bad, or this is the red team or whatever, right? I can copy the string that proves it. I can press a hotkey. I can tag it. And then whenever another analyst looks at it, if that string hits his computer, it'll highlight it and be like, hey, understudy knew this about this thing. You should know it too. That's so cool.
That's so awesome. That would save so much time in trying to set up these tribal knowledge storage places.
It's basically tribal knowledge, but it's got another feature set of integrations. So like, let's say I'm scrolling through raw logs and I have a tip that's set up and has a bunch of indicators in it. I can API link my tip to the tool, and I can have it scan my screen, make an API call to my tip, and see if anything matches. And then it'll be like, hey, that thing you're looking at, that's got to match in your tip. Or hey, in your ticket system, there's something in your ticket system that like we know about this. Or I can have it query like VirusTotal, or I can have it do clipboard searches against URL scan in all these different places, which like basically I can grab a list of IP addresses while I'm in Splunk or something or wherever. And I can say, oh, I want to know the who is on this. I can just copy it, search my clipboard. Here's all my who is information right there. So quick, so convenient, very, very affordable for analysts. And I actually want to have them come on and chat, because I think they're the only people that I've seen doing something like this. And I think it's so useful for analysts.
From what you're talking about, the thing that I like the most about it is that it minimizes context switching, since it pops up in what they're looking at, which is huge for minimizing.
It pops up in a little overlay window. They call it like augmented reality for your desktop. It pops up in a little overlay window and tells you stuff. You can also like do stuff. So like if you run automations, like you can kick off playbooks right from there. Or if you want to tag your indicators, like you can tag them right there. Like, so it'll actually interact with a lot of those tools as well.
Nice.
So then we move into kind of some of the open sourcey stuff, and the open sourcey stuff gets used in a lot of places. And if we stay on the kind of enterprise level open sourcey stuff, that's where we get like the Molochs and the Security Onions and the MISPs and the Kibanas and the Zeek and Bro and Suricata and Snort. So go ahead and talk about Zeek and Bro and Suricata and Snort.
Yeah, so those are the intrusion detection systems. Some of them can be put into prevention mode. But I wanted to bring both of those up because they're two different realms that these IDS, IPS works into. They have signature matching, and then like Zeek, it's an event-based thing. So Zeek Bro, or what it used to be called Bro, It makes a whole bunch of collection of events as the network information that it's totally blanking on the word, but the stuff that it's interacting with and pulling data from. Builds a whole bunch of events, and then you can search based on events and set up what they call notices based on a whole step of events rather than a static signature, where more traditional IDSs and even in a lot of these enterprise next-gen firewalls and things like that are use a basis of Suricata or Snort at it anyway. And that's why I bring that up, because a lot of the stuff that we work with on a daily basis are signature matches. And even if it is from some of the big names, the core of it still functions very much like a Snort or a Suricata.
Yeah, and then you want to pivot to your next two on the list as well?
Well, do we want to bring up one that you missed that I think is important to mention? Because it's not necessarily a detection tool, but Fiddler.
Which one? Not yet.
Okay.
I want to get there. I figure we do the next two on the list, and then we would get there.
So on that, we have detection. Well, I'll do Rita next from Black Hills Information Security. Now, I have this in my toolbox. Works specifically with the Zeek logs, but it does an interesting thing with looking for beaconing traffic. They brought in an individual who had a degree in electrical engineering, and they built a detection in this that uses a Fourier transform, which is the waves that we see for sound, who took these network logs from Zeek and manipulated so that it would show up as an actual wave. And so we could visually look for beaconing based on a Fourier transform wave rather than looking at summarized mathematics of logs.
Okay.
Right? That's.
I have never used it, but that's kind of dope.
Yeah, right? So because we're human, we inherently work better with colors and pictures than we do with raw text and numbers.
People who make products. That does not mean add more colors and pretty pictures. I do actually like numbers and data. Do not hide that from me.
Yeah, it doesn't mean like put a bunch of color wash over something, but just the brain is able to do pattern detection better with pictures and colors than it is with just single color data.
But also, do not hide your numbers from me.
Which is what I liked about it, right? Being able to take raw data and turn it into a thing that we could then visually see.
Yes, but still don't hide your numbers from me.
And then also in this open source, we have Detection Lab, which is just a series of Vagrant and Docker installs that sets up a lab that uses a free Splunk license, Windows server, desktop, and a logging server. Sets it all up for you. So that you can go about and check out detections, see how the logs generate from the Windows systems, and you could put other stuff to see what other tools are triggering on it, which is why I have this setup, because it's an easy deploy, easy setup, and if you need to add a couple of things, it's, you just add those couple of things, but it allows you to have basically an environment to build your own detection to figure out what may or may not be working.
Yep. And then we move into that concept of like the distros, the Remnux, the Tesseragi that we already talked about, but individual tools that become of great benefit. So things like, everybody has heard Wireshark. Wireshark is great. Maybe you want your data displayed in a cooler way. One way is like NetWitness Investigator or this new one.
Wireshark is great as long as you don't try to load 2 gigs or more into your memory at the same time.
Mm-hmm. But maybe you want to transfer that to Brim Security, or maybe you want to transfer that to Moloch, or maybe you want to transfer that to NetWitness Investigator. But then you also have like Fiddler, which Fiddler essentially at its core is a web debugger. But to me, it's an easier way to look at network traffic if you're looking at like HTTP, HTTPS kind of traffic. It's just a easier way to look at that traffic. It gives you a better view. It basically splits it by call, and then you click on the call and you get all the details in the individual call instead of following like a TCP stream, things like that. So there's some real benefit to that, plus like all the tools that come within the different malware analysis. We did a whole episode on like the malware analysis tools. So like I'm not going to dig really heavily into that.
So a thing that I find interesting about Fiddler is while it was developed mainly for web admins and web developers to troubleshoot what's going on with a website or web application, it's used both by defenders and attackers to figure out what's actually transpiring between the client and the web server to either attack or detect.
Yeah, that's totally true. And then you move into kind of this other concept of bread and butter, the aspects of your toolkit that you can take anywhere.
Which is most of what SOC analysts deal with are these online tools.
Online tools. The thing is there's, safety that you have to take care of in here. And I think we've already talked about that before, so we're not going to rehash that point again.
I think it was in the threat intelligence games episode.
Yeah, probably a combination of that one. And we wish you a very Merry Clickmas. Because we talked a lot about like clicking stuff and like what that means and blah, blah, blah. So for a long time, like, and I'll start this, for a long time, like I was a VirusTotal person, right? And I've had a VirusTotal subscription from a corporate perspective forever, which is how I go download malware samples all the time. But VirusTotal is cool. Basically what VirusTotal does is it links up a whole bunch of stuff and it says, hey, like this file, like it's detected across this many AVs, or this URL has this many detections. And I had like a love affair with VirusTotal for a long time until I met AnyRun. Any.run. Any.run is one of the coolest sandboxes I have ever seen in my life. And I wish they made like on-prem versions, and maybe they do. But man, would that be so cool. Like AnyRun breaks down full process trees. So like if you have a file that you can upload, especially if you're learning or doing this stuff yourself, it'll break down full process trees. It'll break down everything that happens in a clickable format so you can literally look through everything. It is one of the coolest sandboxes I have ever seen. You can interact with stuff as it goes. Like, it's just super awesome. And like, if you find a sample that exists on AnyRun, like if you go search a sample across AnyRun, like you can literally look at these full process trees and stuff if somebody else has already uploaded it, or if you can upload it in that use case. There's just so much that you can do with it. It's one of my favorite like open source tools to use to understand what's happening with like a file. I kick it to you now.
So on the, I don't really have anything with files. A lot of what I have is related to the network itself, or network traffic. But while you were talking, my brain thought of two things that I ended up using a lot, as for an investigation and for potential attack points was Shodan and Census.io.
Mm-hmm.
Census.io is similar to Shodan, but it uses the data that the University of Michigan scanners pick up. So those, and for anyone that isn't familiar, you'll see them when you start seeing what traffic is getting dropped at your exterior firewall. You'll find a bunch of stuff from University of Michigan IP space because they scan the internet on a regular basis. That data gets put into a database, and then you can search that for your IP space. But I would use that during an investigation to see if it was a potentially externally facing system, if there was anything in these public databases that was known that could be attacked. As part of the investigation to figure out if this was going to be compromised, and if I was going to come at it like an attacker, where's the potential first attack point by using these tools?
Oh yeah. And then you get like your network like checks stuff. So IP void, URL void, which is basically the VirusTotal of IPs and URLs. It looks across a whole bunch of block lists, tells you if anything happened. Domain tools, passive total, they're a little bit more on the like cost money side for the most part, but Domain Tools Whois, I think, is still free.
Yeah,
I like their Whois a lot.
Yeah, Domain Tools Whois is free. There's some other stuff that you can do, but some of the paid stuff on Domain Tools that you can do is like if you say you're watching an ASN number specifically, or a specific email address, you can have it set up alerts to look for when an ASN registers something new, or an email address is used to register a new ASN or domain.
Yep. Passive total can be super useful for doing kind of the web query lookup kind of stuff. You've got a couple more like web query lookup kind of things on there too.
Yeah, so I have MX Toolbox because it was one of the first ones that I dealt with, getting into the whole IT realm, cybersecurity. It was mainly for dealing with mail, hence the whole MX part, but it has a whole bunch of other tools that's available also. What I would actually do, because it does have a blacklist check, is I would actually compare blacklist checks between multiple tools to get a better picture if I was looking at IP instead of just trusting one.
Yeah, there's a new one that, like, it's not on the sheet right now, and I think we might have briefly mentioned it before, but it's this thing called emailrep.io. I actually know the guys who make it. They make another email tool that's like Snort for email.
Yeah, didn't you bring this up in a news section recently too?
I think so, because they basically just they check reputation of email addresses. They look to see if there's anything suspicious, if there's any blacklist. It's a really cool way to get a little bit of information on email. However, if you own your own domain, it's likely that you're going to come up suspicious. Like my email comes up as suspicious because I own my own domain and I only use it for like a couple different account sets. So like we've seen this email in 2 reputable sources. We have profiles on well-known sites. We've observed no malicious activity. However, we've only seen this domain like 1 time and a couple other things. So like, you know, it's good. It'll tell you a little bit about a thing, and it'll tell you if it found anything interesting, how long it's been since the domain was created, stuff like that, which is useful. But it's a cool tool.
Yeah, and I've also used the G Suite toolbox. I don't know if I've come across many people that have used this before, but it allows you to do dig requests. Dig is a Linux-based DNS lookup tool from Google itself. But it has some analyzers built into it also. So like if you have a message header that you weren't familiar with, you could throw it in their header analyzer and it would break it out for you. And if it recognized it and tell you what each piece of the header was.
Another cool one. And as we kind of go back just a little bit onto, you know, conceptually is this URLscan.io, which is another URL one. It'll basically give you like Google Safe Browsing and a little bit of information. But like the thing that I find one of the most useful things is it gives you a screenshot of the website, which can be really useful just to like, oh, like this is what that website looks like. That's cool to know. And I like knowing that.
Yeah. And back on the URL IP Void suite, they have a website content dump tool that you can use also. So like if you're investigating... let's just go back in time to when exploit kits were the heyday, but you could use this for like ad network malware, like malvertising, or compromised websites. You're doing a watering hole attack. If you think it's still active, you could use the web content dump and it would just give you a text readout of the web page and everything that was there. And if there was something embedded in the web page itself, then you could just see it in the text without actually interacting with it directly.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, we've talked about a lot of things, but, you know, the one thing that we haven't talked about is probably the most valuable tool in anybody's toolbox.
You mean the technique itself?
I do.
So I like this technique because this was one of the first hacking things that I learned before I got into being a blue teamer. And I use it also in school for doing research. It is one of the, like a Swiss Army knife of conducting investigations. And this is Google hacking, Google Foo, or the Google advanced search operators. These are the things that are like, look at specific domains, look for specific files, knowing how to look for specific strings of words. And that Google search uses Boolean search operators. So you can string together aspects of a search to limit your search results.
And then, I mean, it's also not to say like even just Google in general,
Yep.
like looking for. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Ooh, that was a good one. And then one of the other most important kind of items that come into an analyst repertoire, and this is so non-technical, but it's so important, is like how you take notes.
I would say this is the most important.
Probably the most important is like having your scratch pad, like your ability to quickly copy and paste stuff, take notes, like put things somewhere.
And not just for your knowledge, but in such a way that you can share with your team.
Exactly. So, I mean, we're not going to go into like ticketing systems and stuff like that, but like the scratch pad stuff, like Mac guy, I like Sublime Text, which is expensive, and I like Atom, which is free. And as a Microsoft person, you filthy bastard.
I am not a Microsoft person, but this Microsoft OneNote was the first program I used. I was like, okay, I like this tool. And a way that we actually use it at a SOC that I worked in, which made me really enjoy it for conducting investigations, is you can store the OneNote notebook on SharePoint. Again, another dirty word, but it's a word we can't get away from in a lot of enterprise environments. But if you store OneNote on SharePoint, you can use your Active Directory permissions per notebook, per section, or per page. And OneNote allows the encryption of individual pages. And I think it uses AES 256 at base. So, base DoD encryption of the data itself there. So you can do least privilege control on the data, and you can even encrypt it. But it allows paragraph linking. So let's say that you're conducting an investigation, and like your polarity, you had a pop-up saying, hey, this person saw this. You could use OneNote and do a paragraph link, and in your notes say this investigation over here, and link directly back to the original instead of having to copy and paste it over again.
Yeah, polarity's still cooler.
And you can build your your analyst knowledge base in it so that it maintains an individual context or a single glass of paint, right? So they're conducting their investigation, keeping their notes. You could put your tribal knowledge in there so that it's easily accessible. Just go into a different notebook. This was the thing why I liked it for a bigger SOC. I
am going to use your word snafu forever now. Your single glass of pain.
A Google glass of pain.
Single glass of pain instead of single pane of glass. I'm going to use that forever now.
Awesome.
It's my single glass of pain. Which is actually pretty accurate. I don't know if did you mean to do that, or was it accidental?
No, I do occasionally have spoonerism, so.
That one is perfect though. Like when you talk about like SOC and analysis, like single glass of pain.
That's exactly what it is.
Perfect.
That's exactly what it is. Absolutely. Yeah.
So should we shoot to detection?
At this point, I did my rant about OneNote and why I like it. So definitely take us into our detection.
All right. So we figure that probably the best way to do a detection is to not go like super down the technical chain, but how do we tie a lot of this stuff together in an interesting and meaningful way? So we talked a bit about IDS, we talked a bit about SIM, and we talked a bit about TIP. All these things can tie together in cool and meaningful ways that give you good data. IDS historically can notoriously be pretty loud, especially if you're using open source rules and like emerging threats rules that are made by Proofpoint that they release for free, community versions, stuff like that.
And if it's deployed like most organizations do it, they turned everything on.
Exactly. Basically, it functions more as a log source than it does an alert. However, if that's the position that you're in and you want to get a little bit of additional value, well, if you're bringing your IDS hits into your SIM and you're bringing your tip data into your SIM, most of the time, IP indicators are useless. However, if you start to compare IPs that you think are bad with detections that you have for IDS, you've now created kind of a much higher fidelity view of like these two conditions were met. I know something about this IP address and some signature fired telling me something about this network traffic. So you've now made something that's much more interesting to look at and will probably cut down some of your noise pretty drastically. So that is my detection.
That's awesome. And that's a good technique too, that when someone figures that out, they can figure out other ways to apply it in other realms.
Oh, 100%.
I do have one last thing. You remember the last time that we recorded, I said that I was going to check with my friend who did the music for us?
Yes.
So his name is Joe. He's a fantastic friend.
Thanks, Joe.
Did an awesome job with it. And Orphan Theology is the name of his music project that he's working on during our social distancing quarantine time. So look out for that.
Cool. On that note, I believe that brings us to a close.
It does.
With that said, everyone, stay safe out there. Stay at least 6 feet away from all other human beings. Good luck if you have children. It's not possible. And don't forget to go forth and find badness.